My name is Emily, 32 years old, and I was holding my newborn daughter when my father walked into the hospital room. He arrived late as usual, his eyes cold as they moved from me to the tiny bundle in my arms. What he said next still echoes in my mind. Just don't raise her to be another disappointment like the one you married. My breath caught my arms instinctively tightening around my baby. He had no idea who my husband really was. Before I continue this story, where are you watching from? Please hit that subscribe button. And if you've ever had someone underestimate you, because what happened next changed everything. Let me take you back 5 years when I was 27 and working as a nurse at Chicago General Hospital. That November evening changed my life forever, though I didn't know it at the time. The hospital was hosting its annual charity gala, one of those events where wealthy donors mingled with staff to raise money for the children's wing. I was there in my simple black dress, feeling out of place among the designer gowns and expensive jewelry. That's when I literally ran into him. I was carrying a tray of coffee for the senior nurses when someone backed into me. The coffee went everywhere, mostly on his shirt. I was mortified, apologizing profusely while trying to clean up the mess with cocktail napkins. "Don't worry about it," he said, laughing. "These things happen." I needed an excuse to leave early anyway. His name was Marcus, and he was volunteering at the event serving food to guests. His jeans were worn at the knees, his sneakers had seen better days, and his button-down shirt, now coffee-stained, looked like it came from a discount store. But his smile was genuine, reaching his warm brown eyes in a way that made my heart skip. We ended up talking in the hospital courtyard while his shirt dried. He told me he worked in logistics, helping companies manage their supply chains. "Nothing glamorous," he said with a shrug, "but it pays the bills and leaves me time to volunteer." I told him about my work in the cardiac unit, how I'd wanted to be a nurse since I was little. He listened with such intensity, asking questions about my patients, my dreams, my life. No one had ever paid such close attention to my words before. My father, Robert, had different dreams for me. He was a factory supervisor who'd worked his way up from the assembly line, and he believed in success measured by dollars and titles. When I chose nursing over medical school, he called it settling for less. "You're smart enough to be a doctor, Emily. Why choose to be just a nurse?" He never understood that helping people, directly being there for them in their most vulnerable moments, meant more to me than prestige. Marcus and I started meeting for coffee. He always suggested small diners, family-owned places, where the waitresses knew everyone by name. He'd order the cheapest thing on the menu, and we'd talk for hours. He spoke passionately about inequality, about how success shouldn't be measured by bank accounts, about building communities where everyone had dignity, regardless of their job title. I found myself falling for his kindness, the way he remembered every detail I told him, how he'd text me funny observations during his workday, the way he'd show up at the hospital with sandwiches during my double shifts, knowing I'd forget to eat. Our first kiss happened 6 weeks after we met. We were leaving the free clinic where we both volunteered on weekends. The rain had started suddenly, and we were huddled under the tiny awning. He looked at me with such tenderness and said, "Emily, you make me want to be the best version of myself." Then he kissed me soft and sweet while the rain poured around us. I didn't care that his car was 15 years old or that he counted pennies at the grocery store. I didn't care that he wore the same 5 shirts in rotation or that our dates were picnics in the park instead of fancy restaurants. I was in love with his soul, his compassion, his integrity. My family had other opinions. When I finally brought Marcus to a family barbecue 3 months into our relationship, my father took one look at his old Toyota Camry and frowned. Robert was a man who judged everything by appearances. He drove a BMW he couldn't quite afford, wore designer watches bought on credit, and constantly talked about property values and stock portfolios he didn't have. "So, Marcus," my father said barely 5 minutes after they met, "what exactly are your career prospects?" Marcus remained calm. "I manage supply chain operations for various companies. It's stable work with room for growth." My father's eyebrows rose skeptically. "And what does that pay?" "Enough to support a family. Emily's used to a certain lifestyle." That was a lie. I'd been supporting myself since college, living in a tiny apartment with a roommate budgeting every penny. But my father liked to pretend we were wealthier than we were. Marcus met his eyes steadily. I believe in living within means and finding happiness in things money can't buy. Emily and I share those values. My mother, Martha, tried to smooth things over, but I could see her disappointment too. She'd married my father young, always regretting not finishing college, and she'd projected all her ambitions onto me. She'd imagined me marrying a doctor or lawyer, living in a big house in the suburbs, giving her grandchildren who'd attend private schools. My brother Jake made things worse. He was an investment banker, though junior level, and he never let anyone forget it. Throughout dinner, he kept making snide comments. Must be nice not having the pressure of a real career. Some of us have to worry about portfolios and market volatility. Marcus took it all in stride, helping my mother clear plates, complimenting her potato salad, asking my father about his work at the factory. But I saw the way my family looked at him like he was temporary, like I'd come to my senses eventually. The next 6 months tested our relationship in ways I never expected. Marcus lived in a small one-bedroom apartment in a modest neighborhood. The building was old but impeccably maintained, and his apartment, while sparse, was always perfectly clean. He had a few pieces of simple furniture shelves lined with books and a kitchen where he cooked me elaborate meals from scratch. My roommate Sarah wasn't supportive. Emily, you're throwing away your future. You're beautiful, smart, accomplished. You could have any man you want. Why are you wasting time with someone who can barely afford to take you to dinner? I tried explaining that Marcus gave me something more valuable than expensive dinners. He listened to me, really listened. He supported my dreams. He made me laugh. He volunteered 30 hours a week on top of his regular job. He was teaching English to immigrants at the community center. He was everything I wanted in a partner. But the pressure from my family was relentless. Every Sunday dinner became an interrogation. Had Marcus gotten a promotion? Was he looking for better work? Did I really want to struggle financially my whole life? The breaking point came at Thanksgiving. Marcus joined us bringing a homemade pie that had taken him hours to make. My father spent the entire meal talking about Jake's new promotion, his bonus, his apartment in the financial district. Then he turned to Marcus. I suppose in your line of work there aren't really bonuses or advancement opportunities. Must be limiting. Marcus set down his fork carefully. Actually, I find my work very fulfilling. I'm helping companies become more efficient, reducing waste, improving systems that affect thousands of workers. My father laughed. Actually laughed. That's a nice way to spin being stuck in middle management. I saw something flash in Marcus's eyes just for a moment. Then he smiled. You're right that I'm not focused on climbing corporate ladders. I measure success differently. After dinner, I found my mother crying in the kitchen. I just wanted more for you, Emily. Is it wrong to want my daughter to be secure, to not struggle like I did Mom? I'm happy. Isn't that enough? She looked at me with such sadness. Happiness doesn't pay medical bills or put children through college. Meanwhile, I'd started noticing things about Marcus that didn't quite add up. His clothes were simple, but they were always perfectly tailored. His apartment was modest, but in a building with surprisingly good security. He'd sometimes get phone calls that he'd taken another room, speaking in what sounded like different languages. When I asked about his family, he was vague, saying they weren't close. 6 months after that first coffee-stained meeting, Marcus proposed. We were at the hospital in the same courtyard where we'd had our first real conversation. He got down on one knee with a simple solitaire ring. Emily, you've shown me what real love looks like. You see people for who they are, not what they have. You've made me believe in forever. Will you marry me? I said yes, immediately, tears streaming down my face. The ring was modest, probably cost him months of savings, but it was perfect. We were perfect. When I told my family, the reaction was explosive. You're making the biggest mistake of your life, my father shouted. This man cannot provide for you. What happens when you have children? What happens when you want to buy a house? You're being naive and romantic and you'll regret this. Jake was even worse. I give it 2 years before you're divorced and moving back home. Marcus is a nice guy, but nice doesn't pay mortgages. My mother just cried. We won't be able to help you financially when things get tough. You need to understand that. Only my grandmother, my father's mother, pulled me aside privately. Sometimes, dear, the heart sees what the eyes cannot. If you love him, that's enough for me. 3 months before the wedding, something strange happened. Marcus and I were discussing wedding plans, and I mentioned my parents' insistence on a bigger celebration than we could afford. How much would make them happy? Marcus asked. I laughed bitterly. They want to invite 100 people, have it at a country club. We're talking $30,000 minimum. It's impossible. Marcus was quiet for a moment. What if I could arrange something? With what money? I'm not letting you go into debt for a wedding, Marcus. We'll do something small. That's fine. He pulled me close. You deserve to have the wedding you want. Just marry me, I said. That's all I want. But I could see him thinking, planning something. Our wedding day arrived in June, a full year after we'd gotten engaged. Despite my wishes for something simple, my parents had insisted on a larger affair to save face with extended family and friends. They'd somehow scraped together enough for a reception at a modest banquet hall, though my father made sure Marcus knew every penny was coming from them. The morning of the wedding, as I was getting ready with my bridesmaids, my father pulled me aside. It's not too late, Emily. You can still call this off. Dad, I love him. Love doesn't pay bills. Love doesn't buy houses or put kids through school. You're about to shackle yourself to a life of limitation. I turned away from him, fighting tears that threatened to ruin my makeup. Maybe you measure life by limitations. I measure it by love. The ceremony itself was beautiful despite the tension. Marcus had somehow arranged for stunning floral arrangements far beyond what we'd budgeted. When I asked him about it, he said a friend owed him a favor. He had a lot of those friends, apparently. His side of the aisle was notably sparse. 5 guests total: an older gentleman in an expensive suit who Marcus introduced as a mentor, a young woman who was apparently a colleague, and 3 others who seemed oddly formal, calling him Mr. Blackstone instead of Marcus. When I asked about his family, he said quietly, "You're my family now, Emily. That's all that matters." My father's speech at the reception was a masterclass in passive aggression. Marriage is about partnership. He began looking directly at Marcus. It's about 2 people contributing equally to build a life together. I hope my daughter has found that partnership despite appearances suggesting otherwise. I hope she finds happiness, even if it's not the comfortable life we'd envisioned for her. And I hope Marcus understands the treasure he's been given, even if he can't provide her with treasures of his own. I wanted to crawl under the table. My cousins whispered behind their hands. My Aunt Patricia, my father's sister, made sure to mention how well her daughter was doing with her surgeon husband. Such a lovely home they have. 3 cars, planning a vacation to Europe. During the reception, I overheard my Uncle Ted talking to my father by the bar. "You're handling this well, Rob. Must be hard watching your daughter throw her life away." "She made her choice," my father replied. "When she's struggling to make ends meet in 5 years, she'll understand what she gave up." Marcus found me crying in the bathroom an hour later. My cousin had just shown me photos of her new beach house, making pointed comments about how love was nice, but financial security was nicer. "Hey," Marcus said softly, pulling me into his arms. "Look at me. We're going to be fine. Better than fine. How can you be so calm? They're humiliating us." He lifted my chin, his eyes intense. "Because I know something they don't. Trust me, Emily. One day they'll understand. For now, let's just focus on us." We had our first dance to a simple acoustic song. Marcus held me close and whispered, "You look absolutely beautiful. I'm the luckiest man alive." My brother gave a drunken toast that included the line, "Here's to Marcus, who might not have much but at least has good taste in women." The worst moment came when my father cornered Marcus during the reception. I was close enough to hear every word. "Let's be clear about something," my father said. "You've taken on a responsibility today. Emily deserves a good life. If you can't provide that, if you drag her down to your level, I will never forgive you." Marcus's voice was steady. "What level would that be exactly?" "Don't play games. You know what you are and what you aren't. You're a working-class guy with no prospects, no connections, no real future. Emily could have married a doctor, a lawyer, someone who could give her everything. And yet she chose me," Marcus said quietly. "What does that tell you?" "It tells me she's young and foolish and you took advantage of that. Or maybe it tells you that she values things you don't understand." My father laughed coldly. "Values don't pay for children's education. Values don't buy health insurance or retirement funds." "You're right," Marcus said. "But values do determine how you treat people, how you measure worth, how you define success." Emily understands that. I'm sorry you don't. Just remember this conversation when she's working double shifts to support your family while you're still shuffling packages or whatever it is you do. I'll remember everything about today, Marcus assured him. Everything. On our wedding night in the modest hotel room we'd booked, Marcus held me while I cried out all the frustration and hurt. They don't deserve you, he said, stroking my hair. You're so far above their petty materialism. They're my family, Marcus. I love them despite everything. I know. And that's one of the reasons I love you. You see the good in people even when they don't show it. I wish they could see the good in you. He was quiet for a moment. They will. One day they will. I thought he meant they'd eventually see his character, his kindness, his integrity. I had no idea he meant something entirely different. Our first year of marriage unfolded in Marcus's apartment, which he insisted was perfectly adequate for two people. The neighborhood was safe, the neighbors were friendly, and we were close to both my hospital and his office. Still, I took extra shifts whenever possible, wanting to contribute more to our savings. My father called monthly, always with the same opening question: Do you need money? We're fine, Dad. Your mother's worried. You're working too much. If that husband of yours was providing properly, you wouldn't need overtime. I work extra because I want to, not because I have to. That was partially true. Marcus always seemed to have exactly enough for our bills, never more, never less. When I questioned how his modest salary stretched so perfectly, he'd joke about being good with spreadsheets. The strange visitors continued. Men and women in expensive suits would occasionally come to our apartment, always when Marcus thought I was at work. Once I came home early with a migraine and found 3 people in our living room with laptops and documents spread across our coffee table. They jumped up when I entered, gathering papers quickly. Marcus smoothly introduced them as colleagues working on a project. But I noticed how they deferred to him, how they called him sir, how they seemed almost afraid of me being there. The pregnancy came as a surprise 8 months into our marriage. I was both thrilled and terrified. Marcus, however, seemed completely calm. This is wonderful news, he said, spinning me around our tiny kitchen. Our child is going to be so loved. But Marcus, the expenses. Babies are expensive. Healthcare, diapers, formula, if I can't breastfeed, eventually childcare when I go back to work. We'll manage. We always do. I called my mother first. She cried, but not entirely from joy. How are you going to afford a baby, Emily? Babies need so much. We'll figure it out, Mom. My father's reaction was worse. I spoke to him that evening, and his first words weren't congratulations. This is irresponsible, Emily. You can barely support yourselves, and now you're bringing a child into poverty. We're not in poverty, Dad. You're living paycheck to paycheck in a one-bedroom apartment. What happens when the baby gets sick? What happens when you need a bigger place? Have you thought this through at all? Marcus took the phone from me when I started crying. Robert, your daughter is having a baby. Your grandchild. The appropriate response is congratulations. The appropriate response is concern for their welfare. Can you provide for them? I will ensure they have everything they need. With what money? You've been married a year, and you still have nothing to show for it. I have a wife who loves me and a child on the way. That's everything. My father hung up. The worst confrontation came at Christmas. We drove to my parents' house in Marcus's old Toyota, which now made concerning noises when it turned. My brother Jake was there with his new girlfriend Stephanie, a lawyer from a prominent family. The contrast was deliberately displayed. Jake had rented a luxury car for the occasion. Stephanie wore jewelry that cost more than our entire wedding. During dinner, my father made an announcement. Your mother and I want to help with the baby expenses. We're prepared to offer you a loan. That's generous, Dad, but... There are conditions, he continued. First, Marcus needs to get a real job. I've spoken to some people. There's an opening at the factory. It's entry level, but it's honest work with growth potential. Marcus set down his fork. I have a job, Robert. You have something you call a job, but it's clearly not enough. Second condition, Emily. You'll need to come back here for Sunday dinners. We want to make sure our grandchild is being raised properly. I felt my face burn. Raised properly with the right values, the right ambitions. Not this bohemian nonsense about love being enough. Jake laughed. Come on, Emily, take the money. Pride doesn't buy diapers. My mother added softly. We just want to help, sweetheart. Marcus stood up slowly. Thank you for the offer, but we decline. You decline. My father's voice was incredulous. You're too proud to accept help for your child. I'm too proud to accept conditions that insult my family and my ability to provide for them. Your ability. Robert laughed bitterly. What ability? You've been freeloading off my daughter for over a year. That's enough, I said, standing too. Marcus has never freeloaded. He pays his share. His share of nothing is still nothing, Emily. We left before dessert. In the car, Marcus made a call in what sounded like Mandarin, then French, then Spanish. When I asked about it, he said he was checking with international clients about a project. 2 weeks later, I found a business card that had fallen from his jacket. It read, Marcus Blackstone, Chief Executive Officer, Blackstone Industries. My heart stopped. Marcus, I said that evening, holding up the card. What is this? He sighed, sitting down heavily. I was hoping to tell you differently, more gradually. Tell me that you've been lying to me our entire relationship. Not lying. Omitting. That's the same thing. No, it's not. Everything I told you was true. I do work in logistics and supply chain management. I just own the company that does it. Several companies, actually. I stared at him, my mind spinning. You're rich. My family is wealthy, yes. I personally have access to considerable resources. How considerable? He hesitated. Blackstone Industries has a current valuation of approximately $8 billion. I sat down hard. 8 billion. Billion with a B, yes. And you let my family humiliate you. You let them treat you like you were worthless. I let them show me who they really were. And more importantly, you showed me who you really were. You loved me when you thought I had nothing. Do you know how rare that is? I started crying. But the deception, Marcus. He knelt in front of me. 3 years before I met you, I was engaged to someone else. Victoria. She was perfect on paper, beautiful, educated, from a good family. We dated for 2 years. I thought she loved me. Then I overheard her on the phone with her sister laughing about how she'd secured her future, how she'd never have to work, how she was already planning to spend my money. She literally had spreadsheets of my net worth. That's horrible. It broke something in me. After that, I couldn't trust anyone's motivations. Were they nice to me because they liked me or because of my bank account? Did women date me for my personality or my portfolio? So I created this version of myself. Simple, hardworking, ordinary. And then I met you. Why didn't you tell me after we got married I was going to? But then I saw how your family treated me, and I wanted to see how far they'd go. I wanted them to show their true colors completely. And honestly, I wanted to protect you from what wealth does to people. I've seen it corrupt relationships, destroy families. I wanted us to build our foundation on something real first. So everything's been a lie. This apartment, your car, I own this building, and 12 others like it in the city. The car is genuinely mine, though. I bought it in college and kept it for sentimental reasons. I laughed through my tears. You own the building. I bought it when I decided to live here. I wanted to make sure it was properly maintained. Mrs. Chen downstairs. She thinks I'm the best tenant ever because I secretly had her apartment renovated when she was visiting her daughter. The visitors in suits, my executive team. We were having emergency meetings about a merger. The phone calls in different languages. I speak 7 languages. It's useful in international business. I stood up, pacing. I don't know how to process this. I'm still me, Emily. The man who loves you. The man who volunteers at the clinic. The man who makes you terrible pancakes on Sunday mornings. But you're also someone who could buy a small country. Medium-sized, actually, he said, with a small smile. This isn't funny, Marcus. I know, I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. But I needed to know you loved me, for me. I do love you. But trust is important too. You're right. I promise no more secrets. Ask me anything. Why haven't you defended yourself against my father's attacks? Because money doesn't make someone worthy of respect. Character does. And his attacks say more about him than about me. The next months of my pregnancy were surreal. Marcus gradually revealed the extent of his wealth, though he insisted we maintain our current lifestyle until the baby arrived. He wanted my family to fully commit to their prejudices before revealing the truth. The baby shower my mother organized was painful. She'd insisted on hosting it at her house, decorating with items from the dollar store, apologizing repeatedly to the guests for the modest spread. "We do what we can with what we have," she said pointedly, glancing at Marcus, who was helping serve drinks. "My cousins brought secondhand baby clothes, making sure to mention they were used. We thought you'd appreciate practical gifts given your situation." Aunt Patricia gave us a $20 gift card, announcing loudly that every little bit helps when you're struggling. Marcus thanked each person graciously, writing down their gifts in a notebook. I thought it was for thank you cards. I didn't realize he was documenting every slight, every condescension, every cruel assumption. My brother Jake arrived late with Stephanie carrying an elaborate gift basket. "This is from Stephanie's family," he announced. "They wanted to help out since you know things are tight for you guys." "That's very kind," Marcus said evenly. "Please thank them for their generosity." During the shower, my father pulled Marcus aside. I followed, listening from the hallway. "Have you reconsidered my job offer?" "No, Robert, I haven't. Your pride is going to hurt your child. Formula diapers, clothes, medical bills. These things add up. Your wife is already exhausted from working extra shifts pregnant. What happens after the baby comes, I'll take care of my family." With what good intentions? Love, you can't feed a baby with feelings, Marcus. You'd be surprised what love can accomplish. You're delusional. And when reality hits, when Emily's struggling with a newborn and bills are piling up, remember that you had chances to do better and refused out of pride. I'll remember everything, Robert. Every single word. 3 weeks before my due date, complications arose. My blood pressure spiked and the doctor recommended immediate bed rest. I was terrified about missing work, losing income. Marcus' calm response confused the medical staff. "Whatever she needs," he told them. "Cost is not a consideration." The head nurse pulled me aside later. "Your husband seems very confident about the financial aspect. Does he have good insurance through work?" "Something like that," I said, still processing the reality of our situation myself. My parents visited, and my father immediately started calculating costs. "This kind of specialized care could run tens of thousands, Emily. You need to accept our help." "We're covered," I said. "By what, Marcus's logistics job? Those places have terrible insurance." "We're fine, Dad. You keep saying that, but I see the stress on your face. Stop being proud. Think about the baby." Marcus entered then, with coffee, for everyone expensive coffee, I noticed, though my parents didn't recognize the brand. Labor came suddenly at 37 weeks. The baby was positioned wrong, requiring an emergency C-section. As they wheeled me in, Marcus kissed my forehead. "Everything's gonna be perfect," he whispered. "Trust me." Our daughter was born at 3:22 in the morning, perfect and healthy despite being early. But she needed monitoring in the NICU as a precaution. My parents arrived as I was recovering, and my father immediately cornered the billing department about costs. He returned pale. "Emily, the NICU alone is $5,000 a day, plus the surgery, the room, the specialists. You're looking at potentially hundreds of thousands." Marcus was holding our daughter through the incubator gloves. "We're covered, Robert. Focus on your granddaughter, not the bills. How can you be so calm? Do you understand what this will do to your finances?" "I understand perfectly." "Then you're either stupid or in denial." Or, "I'm neither," Marcus said quietly, not looking up from the baby. "Have you considered that possibility?" My mother tried to make peace. "The important thing is everyone's healthy. We'll figure out the money as a family." "No need," Marcus said. "It's handled." The next day, I was moved to a private suite that rivaled luxury hotels. My parents were confused. "There must be a mistake," my mother said. "This is for VIP patients." "No mistake," the nurse assured her. "Mr. Blackstone arranged everything." How my father demanded. The hospital administrator appeared, then a man I'd seen at galas but never spoken to. "Mrs. Blackstone," he said warmly. "Congratulations on your daughter." "Mr. Blackstone, the board wanted me to personally thank you for your family's continued generosity." My father's face went white. Generosity. The Blackstone Foundation has been one of our largest donors for years. The new pediatric wing is actually named after them. I assume you'll want the dedication ceremony to coincide with your daughter's first birthday. Marcus smiled. "That would be lovely. Thank you, Richard." After the administrator left, my father stared at Marcus. The Blackstone Foundation. My family's charitable organization. We focus on healthcare access for underprivileged communities. Your family, Jake said slowly. Marcus Blackstone Industries. Among other things, yes. The room fell silent. My father sank into a chair. You're that Blackstone. The CEO, the billionaire. I prefer to focus on the work rather than the net worth, but yes. The revelation hung in the air like a thunderclap. My father's face went through a series of expressions I'd never seen before: shock, disbelief, anger, embarrassment, and finally something like fear. But you drive a 15-year-old Toyota, he said weakly. I like that car. It has sentimental value. You live in a one-bedroom apartment. I own the building, and the 3 adjacent ones. We're actually planning to renovate them into affordable housing for hospital workers. Jake fumbled with his phone, pulling up Forbes. His face went white. It says here your net worth is $11.3 billion. Market fluctuations. It varies. My mother started crying. I don't understand. Why would you pretend to be poor? I never pretended to be poor. I simply lived modestly and let you draw your own conclusions. You let us humiliate ourselves, my father said, his voice rising. All those comments about you being worthless, not good enough. I let you reveal your character. Every insult, every condescending remark, every time you tried to bribe Emily to leave me, you showed exactly who you are. A man who measures worth in dollars instead of decency. My father's face turned red. How dare you? How dare I, what live simply, love your daughter genuinely, refuse to buy your respect? Marcus stood still, calm, but with steel in his voice. You had a year and a half to know me, to see how I treated Emily, how hard I worked, how much I loved her. But all you saw was my car and my apartment. You never once asked about my volunteer work, my education, my goals. You just counted my perceived pennies and found me wanting. We were trying to protect Emily, my mother protested. From what? From a man who cooked her dinner every night, who supported her dreams, who never once raised his voice or hand to her. You weren't protecting her from poverty. You were protecting your own ego from the embarrassment of having a son-in-law you couldn't brag about. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Jake spoke. So when you said you worked in logistics? I do. Blackstone Industries has the largest private supply chain network in North America. We handle everything from medical supplies to agricultural distribution. We employ 47,000 people directly and contract with hundreds of thousands more. My father stood up abruptly. This is a trick, some kind of elaborate joke. Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call. Harrison. Yes, could you bring the documents to room 412 at Chicago General? Thank you. 10 minutes later, a distinguished older man entered carrying a leather portfolio. This was the same man from our wedding, the one Marcus had called his mentor. Mr. Blackstone, he said formally, then nodded to the room. Ladies, gentlemen, Harrison Marcus said, would you please explain to my father-in-law who I am? Harrison looked amused. Certainly. Marcus Blackstone is the CEO and majority shareholder of Blackstone Industries. He inherited the company from his grandfather 5 years ago and has since tripled its value through strategic acquisitions and innovations in supply chain management. He speaks 7 languages, holds degrees from MIT and Harvard, and was featured on the cover of Fortune magazine as their youngest self-made billionaire, though technically he inherited his initial stake. Self-made, my father asked. The inheritance was worth $2 billion. Marcus built it to $11 billion through his own efforts. Harrison opened the portfolio, revealing documents. As requested, sir. I've brought the paperwork for the Chicago properties, the hospital donation records. And he glanced at my father with barely concealed amusement. The recent acquisition documents for Pembroke Manufacturing. My father went rigid. Pembroke. That's my company. That's where I work. Worked? Harrison corrected. The acquisition was finalized yesterday. Significant restructuring is planned. My father looked at Marcus in horror. You bought my company. Marcus's expression was unreadable. Blackstone Industries acquires many companies. Pembroke was undervalued, poorly managed, and ripe for optimization. You're going to fire me. On the contrary, you're being promoted. What Harrison handed my father, a document. Effective immediately, you're the director of floor operations. The position comes with a salary increase of 300% full benefits and stock options. Congratulations. My father stared at the paper. I don't understand. Marcus finally showed emotion, his eyes softening as he looked at me holding our daughter. You're the grandfather of my child. Despite everything, Emily loves you. That makes you family. And I take care of family. But understand this is a one-time gift. You'll keep the job only if you perform well. I don't do nepotism. My mother was sobbing now. We're so sorry. We judged you terribly. You judged me accurately based on your values. The problem wasn't your judgment. It was your values. Jake cleared his throat. So when I mocked you about not understanding real careers or market volatility, I was managing a portfolio worth more than your entire firm handles. Yes, the irony wasn't lost on me. And the wedding, when Dad said you couldn't provide treasures for Emily. Marcus walked over to me, kissing my forehead. I gave her the only treasure that matters. Genuine love. The rest is just money. My father finally found his voice. Why reveal this now? You could have kept pretending. Because my daughter was just born. She's going to grow up in a world where people will judge her for her wealth. They'll befriend her for her trust fund, date her for her inheritance. I want her to see early and often what real values look like. I want her to know that her grandfather learned to see beyond bank accounts, that he learned to value character over cash. I can't just forget the past year and a half of deception. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to learn from it. Every time you see me, remember that you had countless dinners to know me and you never tried. Remember that you valued your daughter less because of who you thought she married. Remember that you were willing to watch her struggle rather than accept someone you deemed beneath you. The room was thick with tension. Our daughter started crying, and I shifted her to nurse. Marcus immediately moved to help adjusting pillows, bringing me water, his attention completely focused on us. Harrison, Marcus said without looking away from us. Please arrange for the house to be ready when Emily and the baby are discharged. The full staff should be in place. House, I asked. I bought something more suitable for a family. 12 bedrooms might be excessive, but the grounds are perfect for children. 12 bedrooms. My mother gasped. The property includes a guest house where you're welcome to stay whenever you'd like to see your granddaughter. Though I should mention it's 40 minutes from the city. Jake was still staring at his phone. It says here you donated $50 million to children's hospitals last year. $53 million. But who's counting? And you let us give you secondhand baby clothes, which we'll donate to families who actually need them. Every gift you gave thinking we were poor will go to people who are. My father stood up slowly, his face aged 10 years in 10 minutes. I need time to process this. Take all the time you need. Your position at Pembroke starts Monday. What if I refuse? Then you refuse. I won't hold it against you. But Emily tells me you've complained about your boss for 15 years. Now you'll answer directly to the board. To me, essentially. You're my son-in-law. Yes, the one you said would amount to nothing. The disappointment you warned Emily about. The failure you tried to bribe out of her life. Life has a sense of humor, doesn't it? As my family filed out, each hugging me tentatively, my father stopped at the door. Marcus, he said quietly, at the wedding you said you'd remember everything. You meant this moment, didn't you? No, Robert. I meant the lesson this moment would teach. Wealth is temporary, power is fleeting, but how you treat people when you think they can't benefit you. That's who you really are. And now you know who you really are. After they left, I looked at Marcus. That was harsh. Was it I could have destroyed his career? Instead, I gave him an opportunity. I could have revealed this at the wedding, humiliating them publicly. Instead, I waited until private. I could have cut them from our lives entirely. Instead, I'm giving them a chance to know their granddaughter. You bought my father's company just to make a point. I bought the company because it was a good investment. The point was just a bonus. I laughed, despite everything. $11 billion, give or take a few million. And you let me work double shifts thinking we needed the money. You worked double shifts because you loved your job. I never wanted to take that from you. But now if you want to work less to be with our daughter, or not at all, or start your own practice, or go back to school, or travel the world. We can do any of that. I looked down at our daughter sleeping peacefully after nursing. What do we tell her about all this? The truth. That money doesn't determine worth. That character matters more than credit scores. That love isn't measured in dollars but in presence, patience, and sacrifice. And that her father is apparently Batman. He laughed. Bruce Wayne wishes he had my origin story. The transformation in my family over the following months would have been comical if it weren't so revealing. My father, now director of floor operations at Pembroke, approached his new role with a humility I'd never seen before. He called Marcus sir in every meeting until Marcus told him to stop. "Your family, Robert. Act like it." The first time my parents visited our new home, my mother cried. The estate was understated but elegant, with gardens that seemed to stretch forever, and a view of the lake that took your breath away. The nursery alone was larger than their entire first floor. "This is where our granddaughter will grow up," she whispered. "This is where she'll sleep," Marcus corrected. "She'll grow up in the world volunteering, learning, experiencing life at every level. Wealth without wisdom is just expensive ignorance." Jake started calling weekly, seeking investment advice. Marcus always gave the same response: "Invest in people, not just portfolios. The return on human kindness pays dividends money can't match." At our daughter's first birthday party held at the Children's Hospital where I worked, my father gave a speech I'll never forget. "A year ago, I thought I knew what success looked like. I thought I understood value. I believed wealth was earned and poverty was chosen. Then I met my son-in-law. Really met him, not the version I'd invented based on his car and clothes. He taught me that I'd been so busy counting coins, I'd forgotten to count character. So busy measuring net worth, I'd forgotten self-worth had nothing to do with networks." He paused, looking at Marcus holding our daughter. "This man who I said would amount to nothing has given more to charity in 1 year than I'll earn in a lifetime. He employs thousands, helps millions through his foundations, and most importantly, loves my daughter with a depth I didn't know existed." I called him a disappointment. The only disappointment was my inability to see past my own prejudice. He raised his glass to Marcus, who had every right to destroy me, but chose to educate me instead; to Emily, who saw what I was too blind to see; and to my granddaughter, who will grow up knowing that value isn't measured in dollars, but in how you treat people when you think they have nothing to offer you. Marcus stood still, holding our daughter. "Thank you, Robert. But if I may add something." The room quieted. Everyone here has heard this story of the billionaire who pretended to be poor. Some of you think it's about revenge or teaching lessons. It's not. It's about love. I fell in love with a woman who looked at me, a seemingly broke volunteer at a charity event, and saw someone worth knowing. She defended me when it cost her family relationships. She chose me when everyone told her she was making a mistake. She loved me when love was all I appeared to offer. He looked at me, his eyes soft. Emily didn't marry up or down. She married across to someone who matched her heart, if not her background. The money is nice. It solves certain problems and creates others. But at 3 a.m. when the baby is crying, money doesn't help. Love does. When your partner is sick, scared, or sad, billion-dollar portfolios mean nothing. Presence means everything. He turned to address everyone. "So yes, I have wealth. But Emily has something rarer. She has the ability to see through the noise to the truth. She saw me, not my net worth. And that vision, that clarity of heart, is the real fortune in this family." As the party continued, I found myself in the garden with my grandmother, the one who'd supported me from the beginning. "You knew, didn't you?" I asked her. She smiled. "Not the specifics. But I recognized something in Marcus's eyes. The same look your grandfather had when he built his business from nothing. That quiet confidence that comes from knowing your worth has nothing to do with what others think." "Why didn't you say anything?" Would anyone have listened? Your father was so sure he knew best. Sometimes people need to learn their own lessons. Do you think he's really changed? She watched my father playing with our daughter, his face gentle in a way I'd never seen growing up. People don't change, dear. They reveal. The capacity for humility was always in him. It just took extraordinary circumstances to bring it out. 3 years have passed since that hospital revelation. My father now runs Pembroke with a philosophy of employee first, profit second. The company has never been more successful. He regularly quotes Marcus in meetings, take care of your people, and they'll take care of your business. Jake left investment banking to run a nonprofit. Marcus helped him establish focused on financial literacy in underserved communities. He says he finally understands that real wealth is measured in impact, not income. My mother volunteers at the foundation, helping coordinate educational programs. She tells everyone about her brilliant son-in-law, though she's learned to emphasize his charitable work over his net worth. As for Marcus and me, we've found our rhythm. I still work part-time at the hospital because I love it. He still wears his old clothes on weekends and drives that ancient Toyota when we visit my parents, a gentle reminder of assumptions and humility. Our daughter, now 3, is growing up with an unusual perspective. She knows Daddy has important jobs and big responsibilities, but she also sees him volunteering at shelters, teaching free coding classes at the community center, and reading stories at the library. Last week, she asked me a question that stopped me cold. "Mommy, why did Grandpa not like Daddy?" Before I thought carefully about my answer. Sometimes sweetheart grown-ups forget to look with their hearts. They look with their eyes and see the wrong things. But Daddy says Grandpa's good now. Yes, he is. People can learn and grow. Grandpa learned that what really matters isn't what someone has, but who they are. She nodded solemnly, then ran off to play, satisfied with this simple truth. That evening, as I watched Marcus teaching her to tie her shoes with the same patience he brings to board meetings, I thought about the journey we'd taken. The humiliation, the pain, the revelation, and ultimately the healing. "You know," I said to him, "you could have saved us all that grief by just telling the truth from the start." He looked up at me with that smile I fell in love with. "But then your father wouldn't have learned anything. Your family wouldn't have grown. And we wouldn't have this absolutely certainty that our love is real, tested, and true. You played a long game. I invested in a future where our daughter knows her worth isn't tied to her wealth, where she understands that character is currency that never devalues, where she's seen firsthand that money amplifies who you are, it doesn't define it." Our daughter ran over, jumping into his arms. "Daddy, I tied it myself." "That's my brilliant girl," he said, covering her face with kisses. "You can do anything you put your mind to." As I watched them, I realized this was the treasure my father had worried I'd miss out on. Not the billions, not the estates, not the power. But this, a man who loved unconditionally, who taught through patience rather than preaching, who built bridges where others would have burned them. The doorbell rang. It was my parents arriving for Sunday dinner, as they did every week now. My father entered carrying flowers for me and a new book for his granddaughter. "Emily," he said, kissing my cheek, "you look happy." "I am, Dad." He paused, then added quietly, "I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. We're here now. That's what matters." As we gathered around the dinner table, 3 generations sharing a meal, I thought about that moment in the hospital when my father had said those cruel words about disappointment, how that pain had led to this peace, how humiliation had transformed into humility, how a family broken by prejudice had been rebuilt by truth. My daughter was telling a story about her day using her hands expressively like Marcus did. My parents hung on every word these grandparents who'd almost missed out on this joy because they couldn't see past a bank statement. After dinner, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, my father said something that felt like the end of one story and the beginning of another. "You know, Marcus, I've been thinking about that first dinner when I asked about your prospects. You said you managed supply chains. You weren't lying, were you? You just let me assume the scale." Marcus smiled. "The truth was always there, Robert. You just had to be willing to see it, like Emily did." "Like Emily did," Marcus agreed, taking my hand. My daughter climbed into my lap, yawning. "Mommy, tell me the story about how you met Daddy." I looked at Marcus, then at my parents, all of us understanding that this story would be told differently now. Not as a cautionary tale about marrying down, but as a love story about seeing up past the surface to the soul beneath. "Well, sweetheart," I began. "It started with spilled coffee and the kindest eyes I'd ever seen." As I told our story revised and redeemed, I realized that every family has moments that define them. Ours was that moment in the hospital, when everything we thought we knew shattered, and from those pieces we built something better, something real, something worth more than all the money in the world. The sun set over the lake, painting the sky in shades of gold that no amount of wealth could buy. My daughter fell asleep in my arms, my husband's hand in mine, my parents nearby. And I knew that this moment of peace and connection was the fortune my father had feared I'd lose. Instead, I'd gained everything. Not because I'd married a billionaire, but because I'd married a teacher disguised as a student, a man who understood that the greatest wealth is the wisdom to know what really matters. As we headed inside, my father stopped Marcus. "Thank you," he said simply. "For the job, yes, but mostly for the lesson." Marcus clasped his shoulder. "We're family, Robert. Family teaches family, even when it takes a while to learn. Looking back now, I wouldn't change anything. Not the pain, not the deception, not even the humiliation. Because every moment led us here to this place of truth and grace, where a little girl grows up knowing that love is the only currency that matters, and character is the only investment that never loses value." What did you think about this story? Have you ever been underestimated by others, only to prove them wrong in unexpected ways? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more stories about love, family, and the triumph of character over circumstance. Share this with someone who needs to remember that true worth isn't measured in dollars, but in the love we give and the lives we touch. Thank you for joining me today, and remember, sometimes the greatest treasures come disguised in the simplest packages.